If you're here, you're expecting the following: an intersection of science, medicine, and AI, how they are sparking a revolution with profound implications, pardon me, for global health and business. AI is transforming how diseases are understood, drugs are discovered, and they're reshaping healthcare business models and opening new markets. It's an exciting time in AI in general, but probably no space more so than in healthcare in terms of what we may see in our lifetimes and certainly generations to follow. So I'm going to ask our esteemed panel to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into Q&A and include you as well. Peter?
Thank you. It's a thrill to be here. I'm Peter Lee, and I'm the president of Microsoft Research, which is the fundamental research division of the company.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Anne Bouverot. I'm currently President Macron's special envoy for the AI Action Summit that will take place in Paris in February, so 3 weeks from now. I also chair the board of ENS, École Normale Supérieure, in Paris.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Eric Xing. I'm a professor of computer science and also the president of Mohammed bin Zayed University of AI in Abu Dhabi.
So, Eric, let's start with you, if I may. Let's start big. What is the next step in terms of AI research within the medical field in general? Give us 30,000 feet to start, and then we can get smaller.
30,000 feet in medicine. Well, I would say that although AI has been disrupting, many sectors of our life, including, in science, maybe biology is left behind, and medicine is left behind. Look at the whole process of drug design, of treatment. You start 10 or 5% of the energy and time and money to do the discovery, and then spend the rest 90% to do trial, validation, and approval, and all that. This is very different from how we produce chips, how we build nuclear power plants, how we do other sciences. And the main reason is because AI still uses a methodology that was inherited from antiquity, like a trial and error, use a physical system to do the perturbation, to do the experimentation, and then wait for your luck. I think AI has the opportunity to make that transformation, to turn biology into a computational-driven and the more efficient, the more productive, and also safer practice, both in research and also in validation. For example, you don't want to start doing wet lab experiment to explore the ocean of hypotheses. You may want to do that through simulations, through computing, to narrow down the search space, and then use the wet lab to be the last mile of validation. So that's just an example of how I see medicine and biology can be transformed with AI.
And do you think that where does trust stand here in terms of questions around AI, but when it gets into something as complicated and personal as medical care?
I think that's a very important question. AI is seen by everyone in a very ambivalent way. Health is probably the area where there's the most hope in terms of the benefits, in terms of the cures it can bring to diseases that cannot be cured today, in terms of the faster and more personalized way to have treatment, and also in terms of the way of bringing to more people in more regions a better ability to diagnose and to cure. So there's lots of hope around AI in health. At the same time, there's lots of fear. And there's lots of fear around personal data use, both in terms of my personal data, what will happen to it, and on a broader level, data used to people understand, especially if they have a specific disease, that they can contribute their medical data to help cure others. That's typically a very altruistic sentiment that most of us have. But at the same time, there are questions around, will this data be used, for example, by insurance companies to increase my premium? So there's lots of fear around that at the same time. And health it's true for AI in general, but health is a particularly good example of that. So it's important that both we talk, of course, of the 3,000 feet view, but also of the more specific use cases and the more specific counterparts in terms of what is needed and what the guardrails are to make sure that things are done in an ethical and careful way, while ensuring that things can go fast, because people want the cures today.
And Europe is in terms of America's distrust of sharing personal data, et cetera, Europe has always been, stricter guardrails.
Absolutely. We have the global data protection regulation in Europe that clearly stems back from the previous world wars, and then when data was used to go after some types of people. This is very deeply ingrained in European consciousness and historical background. And this is exactly why GDPR became such an important thing. At the same time, again, I use the health comparison a lot because people around the world, and in Europe the same, understand the opportunity. So do want to find a solution and the proper balance. In France, for example, before being the special envoy for the Global AI Action Summit, I co-chaired the National Strategy Report for AI with economist Philippe Aguillon. And on data for health, we specifically said we need to change the current way GDPR is implemented so that we continue to comply with GDPR, but we're more open to innovation in health. And that was very well received on such a delicate topic in France.
A fairly big step forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Peter, you wrote The AI Revolution in Medicine, a book probably came out before its time, almost, in terms of some of the conversation. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about that. What made you think it was time to put pen to paper?
Sure, and there's so much to respond to. By the way, we all seem to have some academic connection, because I was saying I've had 2 visiting professorships at ENS, and then Eric and I were on the faculty together at Carnegie Mellon University. And so a little incestuous here.
I'm now actually taking also a professorship in Paris.
That's right. What happened was, of course, the collaboration between Microsoft, especially Microsoft Research, and OpenAI has been going on for several years. And it reached a very interesting stage in August of 2022. And that's when OpenAI came forward and disclosed to us at Microsoft that they had this new model, which we now know as GPT-4. And it was very important then for us and Microsoft Research to assess, are OpenAI's claims about this model true? That's very important because the company was contemplating making a very big financial bet on it. And then what might it mean for different endeavors that people have in their lives? And those endeavors, the 2 most important ones at that time, were health and education. Since I had spent about 5 years outside of Microsoft Research working the healthcare business at Microsoft, I took on the healthcare assessment. And I had a small team at Microsoft Research, and we were doing a lot of in-depth investigation of this new model in secret. And we were pretty amazed.
Was that purposeful? Just parenthetically, in terms of working on this sort of secretly or in a classified way?
Well, Microsoft Research, we are very, very good at a lot of things, but one thing we're horrible at is keeping secrets. So we don't operate very well. We don't have processes to maintain secrets. We're a very open lab. So it was actually in terms of management, a very
concerted effort
for us to operate under the the restrictions at that time that we agreed to with OpenAI. We did not, as far as I know, we didn't leak anything. So I think we survived that. But that started August of 2022. We were doing our work, getting more and more intense, very exciting. And then November 30th of 2022, and I remember that date because it's also my birthday, OpenAI and Microsoft released this new application called ChatGPT. And ChatGPT was using not this GPT-4 model, but was using a toy model, which internally was called GPT 3.5. It's enough of a toy that it's very cheap to be just given away for free. And 3 days later, on December 3rd, I got a call from a doctor friend of mine in the Midwest that more or less said, "Hey, Peter, this is great stuff, this ChatGPT thing. And I'm using it in my clinic to have my receptionist write all the after-visit summaries to my patients." And so my first reaction was, "Oh, man, this is cool." But then the second reaction is, "Oh, my God.
Whoops, yeah.
Should this be allowed?" And this created a fairly intense internal discussion at Microsoft. A bunch of decisions were made, but one decision was we have to lean into educating the medical world about what the benefits, limitations, and risks of this emerging technology. And in consultation with a lot of people, one of the things we learned is that healthcare people still read books. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
And so we set out to write a book and to try to complete the publication of that book in time for the public release of GPT-4, and that's how it all happened.
Eric, last night I watched you at the Oxford Debate Society, standing up in a full-throated way for AI, and I wonder if you can talk about that a little bit. I felt like you felt like it sort of needs defense counsel in a way.
Yeah, that was a very interesting moment because it was the first time that my very work was put under the spotlight to be challenged in such a public way and in a very negative way. It feels me like I'm going to be the guy who destroyed the world and so forth. Right? And I literally disagree with everything being spoke about the excessive risk.
No facts was one of your quotes.
As a scientist, we want to, withstand our position that you need to make an argument based on facts, based on credible reasoning, and also no steps should be missed during that reasoning, because there is a big jump when you say AI become powerful, and then next day AI is going to kill humanity, right? So I think that very culture, that very sentiment, is to be paid attention to correct. And that was why I agreed to join the panel and had this hopefully fun debate. But on the other hand, that experience also told me that how much more education and communication is needed between the scientists and also between the general public. In fact, the general public includes students from Oxford. They are a very educated person, but you can still see that kind of anxiety and ignorance about what the science of AI is about. For example, you talk about the medicine. At least until very recently, even maybe now, people take medicine and biology to be very different disciplines. But if you look at the biology or look at the medicine and use a microscope and also look down into the lower granularity, you will see that it's biology. The two disciplines actually is connected. You talk about the data privacy issue. That's when people want to use the current tool to get themselves taken care of. But the making of that tool, it's interesting as does it require private data, or you actually require the biological data to understand the mechanism. I think there is a space to deliberate some of the nuances, in this whole process. And that actually inspired, one of my projects, which is called GenBio, where we want to ask, what if we do what ChatGPT did with language? You want to simulate all possibilities in the space of biology before jumping into even the medical part, because it's about what happens if a gene goes wrong, what happens if a cell gets injured, or maybe what happens if a virus entered your body and tissue and so forth. And this actually touch more directly upon the biological mechanisms, that require to be understood. And if you look at the literature, the doctors and the biologists don't really communicate in that way to see the problem, the same problem from different angles. So the GenBio mission is to create, a ChatGPT-like system that can be used, by anyone, be a scientist or be, maybe a doctor or maybe the general public, to start asking questions at the biological level. Say, hey, if I've got this mutation, if I have a design of a particular drug, what is going to happen to the cell and to the tissue before you actually grab a test tube and stir the liquids and put a very dangerous virus into it to see what happens. Right? I think that step, can happen now, with the new AI technology. We got a lot of inspiration from GPT and OpenAI's work, because that makes you think what was previously impossible and now, after all, very possible if you use the right compute, use the right data, and use the right algorithm to train them.
And do you think that it's a different question? There are so many questions around AI.
Yes.
Does it become a different question when you talk about medicine and people's health? Is it a different argument? And how do you convince the public at large that this is a good thing? There's smart people like you three working towards this in an altruistic way, but here's what you need to understand.
I think maybe to rebound on what Eric was saying, this is really about being concrete. I mean, a lot of the conversation about AI has been this science fiction thing, even at some point the end of humanity, will we have jobs anymore? And people are starting to realize that, well, maybe this is not what it is. And people have this understanding that in health in particular, it can help. But that's still quite broad, and I think the more specific we can be with examples, the more we can show them, the more people can interact with systems to see exactly what it means, the better it is. So for example, in health, let me take two very extreme examples. There's the how can AI help find cures for very dangerous diseases, be they cancer or other, and how can it speed research and development and more personalized applications. And you can take a particular case of cancer and people understand that, and they understand the very, very strong benefit, the fact that it's not exactly for tomorrow, and the fact that you need to do a lot of research, and they love that. You can also use AI to write for the receptionist to help orient people, or to write reports, and people are much less afraid of that. They understand that, yes, there will be mistakes made maybe in this, but today there are mistakes being made by doctors writing summaries or by receptionists. So that's okay. Actually, it's going to make things simple, quicker, and overall, this is not a risky area. So being very concrete about what the use cases are, and also getting people to use AI and show them when what they're doing is using AI on their phones, for example, is different than having them say, oh, this is GPT-4, or this is Gemini, or this is Le Chat, and it's doing weird things like generating Shakespeare or discovering drugs. But actually, I can see what it is on my phone and what it's helping me with. I'm a bit further away from health, but it could be researching information about diseases. That makes it much more concrete. I think we need to help get the conversation about AI from this very general science fiction movies conversation to a very concrete conversation. And health is a good place to do that.
Yeah.
Just to connect these two comments, which are both, really, I think, very insightful. The fundamental architecture under something like GPT-4 is based on an architecture called neural transformer, and there's another type of generative AI architecture called diffusion. And one of the things that's being learned, and they've proven themselves to be able to learn so effectively from our words and thoughts and actions. But one of the things that is so exciting today, to Eric's earlier point, is those same architectures are proving to be at least as effective at learning, for lack of a better phrase, the languages of nature. to look, for example, at the conformations, the dynamic conformations of biomolecules and proteins. And in the same way that you would just take lots of text from humans, but looking at those natural phenomena and learning through transformer architecture a way to emulate at 10,000, 100,000-fold speed up what the dynamics of those molecules might be. And that is something that has just really energized so much of our research. I think it is, at the same time, a mistake for us as scientists to dismiss people who might have fears, not only of privacy, but of potential weaponization of these technologies. And on that, I do think that I have never seen so many of the world's smartest and leading decision makers thinking so hard about these issues.
That's hopeful.
Yeah, and the last time I saw anything like this was when the human genome was finally mapped, and the whole specter of genetic engineering arose. And again, there was a global scientific and policy response that, at least so far, it hasn't played out fully, but at least so far has managed to mitigate the risks while still getting some of the benefits. Last thing is about technology acceptance and trust. One thing I get asked often is, especially by doctors, is AI going to replace me? And I've looked at this historically. In the history of modern medicine, there have only been 2 times when technology has replaced a medical specialty. One is the technology of brain scans has led to the specialty of neurology, which completely replaced phrenology as a medical specialty. And then molecular biology and blood-based diagnostics, which have affected so many different medical specialties, have eliminated the use of barbers to do bloodletting as a treatment for the flu. Those are probably 2 eliminations of human beings from medical specialties that are good. But in every other specialty that you can think of, technology has deeply altered what doctors do. And my favorite example is an obstetrician. So when an obstetrician in the 1950s had to examine an unborn fetus in a pregnant woman, they used the technique of manual palpation. And in 1955 was the first proposal to use ultrasound, this newfangled technology, instead. And there were serious safety concerns. Will this harm the unborn child? Will this harm the reproductive capabilities of the woman? And it wasn't until the mid-1960s that ultrasound replaced manual palpation as a standard of care. And today, if a pregnant woman were to go to an obstetrician and that obstetrician were to say, I don't believe in this newfangled technology, I'm going to put my hands on you, that would probably be a reportable event. So expectations flip here. And what I believe is going to happen with AI is that those expectations will flip also, that it'll be unthinkable at some point that someone would practice medicine without the aid of AI.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to go to the dermatologist all the time. And I can't believe that they still freeze things. I mean, at this stage, it's 2025, and I'm still, a guy's coming up to me with a silver cannon spraying things against my face. So I hope AI can help me with that. All right, let's play a prediction game. In the next 5 years, in the world of medicine, AI will have done what for us? One thing.
Well, I would imagine that the AI definitely will change the workflow, in many sections, in the whole medical and biological research and practice. Because, look at, for example, with ChatGPT and GPT-4 and GPT-4o now, a part of the human job, in reasoning, in content generation, and even now in movie production probably will be replaced by AI system. And I don't see why that will not happen, in the medical domain, where you actually need to generate high-quality, reliable contents, for patients and maybe consumers to perform. And also I mentioned about the biological research, right? It's a very, very old practice that is very unproductive, very unsafe. And with AI, I think it will be turning into a more principled and more computational heavy and more cost-effective practice. What does that mean to people and to job, right? I think what drives the anxiety is always about this job security replacement. Maybe there's a different way to say it. The very reason for technologists to develop new technology, it is to invent something that is doing the job better than human. Otherwise, we don't do it. If Henry Ford say, I'm going to produce a car which is not going to run faster than you, it will be very strange to hear that, right? So we invent technologies for the goal of doing something better than human in that particular sector. But that shouldn't be taken as a replacement. It's an augmentation of a human capability. So that's where I would say in the next 3 years and 5 years, on the one hand, new technology will keep maturing itself, become more user-friendly, and also more functional, and maybe more versatile. But on the other hand, the general public, the policymakers, will also play the other side to prepare the society, ready for that kind of a new arrival technology. I would imagine that the adoption and the acceptance of this new innovation hopefully will be faster than how long it takes for people to accept from printing press, electricity, and so forth. If I may, I want to add one more note about my personal take on why the anxiety has been so big among many people. I never seen, in my lifetime, for example, that kind of anxiety and the fear of any new technology like AI. But we did see that in the past. I can recall that when this belief of Earth to be the center of the universe was disrupted, people are genuinely fearful and scared. And then when the invention of general relativity and the quantum mechanics was discovered, people genuinely get scared because the very faith that either where is the center of the universe, or whether the physical world live outside of mental world, this kind of a faith was challenged. I feel the arrival of AI are touching people in a similar fashion, that our very faith that we human beings are the only a creature in the world, in the universe that can think, that is the smartest, may be challenged because we are seeing something, beating people in the game of Go, solving, very advanced math problem, and we happen to be not, comfortable or prepared to receive that kind of reality. So I think there is some interesting dynamics and re-education, recalibration, and realignment to happen among ourselves to really build a fresh look into this technology. Shall we even make that assumption, still, on our bedrock of thinking and so forth? I think after all, quantum mechanics, yeah, it relies on, a certain uncertainty principle that, the physical world relies on how you observe it, how you measure it. And in the AI world, if, there's a different way of process reasoning and building agents and completion missions, that may be extending human capability and open our horizon. So I think that could be a conversation to happen in the next 3 to 5 years, in addition to the technological advancements.
And what do you think about, I guess, China and America as the most public race towards getting to a superior position around AI? How do you see that competition?
Maybe first I'd like to respond quickly to one of the things that Eric said. I think about the fear about AI. Actually, there's lots of examples in the past. I once discussed this with the head of history and literature at École Normale Supérieure, who said, she told me, I'm not very familiar with AI, but as a historian in medieval history, I'm very familiar with the end of the world.
Exactly.
And the end of the world was predicted repeated many times for lots of different reasons. And even closer to us, when trains, not high-speed trains, just trains arrived, there were very serious medical reports written, of course they were not fact-based, about the fact that if you take a train, your brain will fry because it goes so fast.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, this fear of new things has existed with humanity, and we just need to respond with facts, with examples, with showing how things are being done. But I thought, sorry about this when you were saying this.
Should I take you off the hook for the China-America one and give it, because
Yes.
Microsoft has labs in Beijing, and
slick.
and America. That's an old Bill Clinton trick you just did, by the way. But no, I mean, look,
Unless you don't want to.
it's very public.
I'm happy to.
Okay.
Maybe can I do the 5-year thing first?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
And let me say that
So nobody will do the US-China. Sorry.
Yeah. I've got some thoughts on it.
I do think that AI is going to be this absolutely glorious thing for the world. I just think the outcomes are real and on balance so positive. When the transistor was invented in 1947 and the Nobel Prize in 48, does anyone know what the very first use of the transistor was? It happened in 1951. It was a tone generator to help telephone switching. The beeps and buzzes. And then the second one, which happened 4 years after that, was the transistor radio, AM radio. No one could conceive of the digital computer and how that would just totally transform our world. So we should not kid ourselves that we can understand what the real applications of AI will be. I think they'll just be profound, but people are thinking so hard about this. I believe in humanity. I believe it'll be good. But having said that, let me try to balance that by trying to make two 5-year predictions that are on the darker side. One that I think will challenge the research community. I think within 5 years, an AI system on its own will make a new scientific discovery, write the paper on it on its own, submit it to Nature or Science, and then Nature and Science editorial boards won't know what the heck to do. And then the second thing, within 5 years, I think there's very high likelihood that on the order of 40 countries around the world might ban the use of AI in biological research out of fears of bioweapons development. I think it'll be wrong-headed, those bans, but I think that those discussions are already happening amongst world leaders. So these are, there's good and bad. The path is going to take lots of twists and turns, but I think that these are important. Now, China, well, it's been an interesting decade. We have had our second largest, in fact, our largest foreign research lab at Microsoft is in Beijing. And then we also have a lab in Shanghai. We think that it has been a huge benefit business-wise for Microsoft and an even bigger benefit for the world. My favorite example is in 2013, early in the era of deep learning, our researchers saw within China people using a weird form of backpropagation in these deep neural nets. Our researchers in China got curious. They studied it, understood how it worked. They formalized it, wrote a research paper, put up some open source code, got the best paper award in the AI conference and NeurIPS conference in 2015, and that is called ResNet. And within 6 weeks after publishing it, Facebook, Tesla, Google, Microsoft were using it. GE, Siemens for medical imaging. Without Microsoft research in China, that technology would have been locked and hidden within that ecosystem. China has less or more lax enforcement of intellectual property. People don't protect their things. And that's part of the business reason we're there, but we're also publishing it all openly for the world.
And you wanted to add something?
Just a very quick point. At the AI Action Summit in Paris, both the US and China at a head of state level are invited. So we need to have these conversations with everyone, understanding the very specific roles that each of these countries have.
Having said all that, Microsoft is absolutely an American company, and
Yeah, very clearly, yes.
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 Why don't we open it up to questions from the audience? Please.
My name is Miriam. I come from medicine and public policy and MBZUAI executive program. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for being here, and especially I'm very proud of President Macron's policy for endometriosis and how he made that strategy across ecosystems. And I'm wondering if there's going to be like a strategy to bring in AI in a more gender balanced when it comes to health.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. So, of course, we're thinking about this AI Action Summit in terms of being as inclusive as possible. This, of course, means countries. We have more than 95 heads of states invited, startups from all over the world, civil society. We also think about the gender and women issues. We had on the road to the summit, we had already almost 100 events, or more than 100 events. One was called No AI Without Women, that we held at the Élysée, and that was a very positive and well-attended event. It will have a sequel on February 11th at Station F. We will also have a panel on February 10th at the Grand Palais on AI and women in general, not just specifically for health. But for your question on AI and health, everything we said about personalized medicine and the need for using data that enables us to do that is true for women, is true for people from specific regions or people who have genetical disposals to specific diseases. So yes, of course, it is super important.
Yes, with the reproduction health and the issues happening around the world, I think it's important to leverage AI.
Can I say that as the technology ripens and it really becomes viable for these kinds of things, I think it's a no-brainer for businesses because one of the things that the tech industry depends on is engagement, intense engagement. And frankly, most people, most of the time, don't engage very much with their health. But there are certain periods in certain people's lives, like menopause, pregnancy, care for an elderly loved one, where that intensity and therefore the engagement goes up. And that's where tech likes to play. So it's just waiting for the technology ideas, I think, to get there. I actually think women's health is a much bigger future business, has much bigger future business potential than health in general or men's health.
And also taking this topic even further into the representativeness of women and all minority and other interest group, in this whole AI ecosystem. I think university plays also a unique role because university is where people get trained and also gets further advancing, the boundary of knowledge. That's actually one of the reasons I decided to join this venture, in MBZUAI in UAE, which is very far away from my home, because I see, a opportunity to rethink about how to build the modern day, agile and and powerful and productive research institution that is compatible with the speed people expect in AI revolution. For example, the way you teach people about knowledge in the past didn't take into account very much about gender and background and the personal context and so forth issue because of a lack of data or because of a lack of ability to process data. But the AI now become not part of knowledge to teach, but also part of the tool you use to teach knowledge. So we have a lot of opportunities to rethink curriculum, teaching methodology, and also the content to teach. I thought also, that happens in the Bay Area, universities and enterprises now are not a dichotomy that is not talking to each other. In fact, we are in the same ecosystem. We have a lot of collaboration. And usually in a new university like us, it made it easier because we don't have to undo a lot of the legacy, a lot of the old school thinking. I think your question is really very timely, and for all the colleagues that I ran into, there is a passion and also there's a sense of urgency to address this issue.
I'm Pratima, I'm an architect. My question is about, we are all talking about how AI can disrupt the labor market and one of the conversations we've been having here in Davos as well is about the rising inequality. So what should we be doing as leaders in private sector, government, to ensure that we don't lose jobs at the bottom of the pyramid? How do we kind of retrain our workforce to fit into this new world where a lot of the jobs that we currently have won't exist? And I'm from India, and we have one of the worst Gini coefficients in the world. And it's even from the private sector, that's not a good thing for us, right? We need to.
Yeah. I'm happy to start here. At the previous AI conferences, like the one in Bletchley Park, some of the discussion was about the end of jobs. I think I completely agree with what was said here. We need to base policies and everything we do on science and on facts. So since then, we've seen lots of great work by economists. And by the way, we'll start the Paris Summit the 2 days before by Science Days to get the facts and evidence established before the policy leaders meet and discuss. So in the area of jobs, economists now very consistently say that yes, some jobs are disappearing, and we're already seeing this. There's dubbing of films or other examples. Jobs are appearing, new jobs are being created as we speak. Some of them we don't even know what they are, to your points. But actually a lot of jobs are being changed. There's a lot of, it's true for doctors, we mentioned it, it's true for pretty much everything across the board. And the other thing that economists show is that actually it's not obvious how AI will impact this. It can help more people who are more junior get to a higher level. Some publications by Brynjolfsson and others show that. Other examples show in research in particular that actually only the top researchers with a lot of seniority will really benefit, but the more juniors and the ones in the middle actually may be more challenged. So this is not completely fixed, and we need to be very carefully monitoring that. But while we're at this stage where we know that it's not the end of jobs, it's more, a lot of them will change, public policy implications are very clear. Training at every level for youth, for people that are in jobs, for people who are unemployed is the number one thing. The second one is, how do you think about reorganization at work? The reorganization of the work between the receptionist, the nurse, the doctor, the patient. The patient also will take a more active role in the relationship with his or her medical care. So working with workers' unions, representatives, with companies, with heads of public administrations, that's super important. So, and the third one is observatories to make sure you get to see what happens. So training, engaging in reorganization of work, and observatories, I think are the three things for officials in terms of work and public policy.
Just to add to this, I think the situation is murky because for top economists, because this is such a highly democratized and democratizable technology. It's a technology that can reach almost everybody, and it diffuses so quickly. And that's different than, say, the steam engine, to take that as an analogy that's used very often. And so I don't think that as a species we've lived through that yet. But for sure, these safety net mechanisms that Anne mentioned just seem so hyper important, and that there needs to be real commitment and clarity. This sounds too flippant, but I remember Sam Altman last year here was asked roughly the same kind of question, and his answer was, and we've been living through this, GPT-4 gets released, and for a week, people are decrying, oh my God, the end of jobs. And then 2 months later, people are complaining, why is this damn thing so slow?
Yes.
And so there's also sort of just, I think that speaks to the diffusion aspect of this. And it's really puzzling, I think, to world leaders.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to add that AI does change the job landscape, but
Yes.
not in a very unilateral way. Because yes, the content of the job will change by AI. In fact, as any technology, if you look at what journalist was about 30 years ago, and now it's different. What the driver is doing 30 years ago and now is also different. So that natural evolution is happening. On the other hand, AI also creates jobs. Because right now, AI rely on very high quality, large amount of data, and the data creation and the collection curation becomes actually a new business that wasn't the case many years ago, right? And also compute and energy efficiency will be the job as well. On the other hand, maybe it will be also useful to remind us what's at the core of the anxiety, why we need jobs, right? I think if you ask anyone on the street, what's their top 3 kind of most important thing they care about? I think quality of life, quality of health, and a better way of using my time. Probably that goes to the top 3. And I don't see a direct connection negatively that AI is going to harm all these dimensions, right? They enter to hopefully improve your quality of life because of the better, higher quality service. They probably will make the healthcare better because of a lot of the innovations that is taking place. And they save your time. You actually could work less and be more productive and become more creative with that time saved, or maybe just be happier. So I don't really see this argument that AI comes as a replacement of human in the job market. It is really how we look at the bigger picture and see a symbiosis of the AI technology or any new technology together with civilization and the human being. And the government, the policymakers, and also the media, general public, really is part of the game, how we receive and adapt to this new era of AI.
Let me just add here, I find it all really puzzling myself. If people can use AI to be healthier, we may need fewer doctors in the world. And so I don't know what that really means in the end. It seems good overall, but there's displacement that happens. And if I could plug something, if you go to ChatGPT, if you're a ChatGPT user, click on Explore GPTs, and you can search for Talk to Peter Lee, and you'll find a GPT that's been trained on all of my writings, all of my speeches, podcasts, my book, all of my research papers, and it's been instructed to converse as though it's me. So, and in fact, in this situation,
you're still alive.
yeah, but
Very much so.
it would actually be a credible replacement for me here. I mean, I think I'm still a little bit more interesting than that.
Yes, definitely.
But even we're all replaceable in that way, and I think your question is it's very hard to peer into the future. What seems so crucial, given that, and what's comforting to me, why I take comfort, is that literally all of the world's leaders and intellectuals are thinking so hard about this. There's no lack of attention to these questions, and so that just I hang on to that.
Actually, one thing I want to follow up what Peter just said about your notion on, one day, maybe very soon, a ChatGPT-like system can deliver a piece of scientific results in the form of a Nature paper and gets accepted and so forth. But there is another open end, I feel, not answered. Who sets the question? Who asks the question? Right? Who actually pushed the agenda?
Yes,
in this
exactly.
research? Right.
Exactly.
That is, I don't even know how to train an AI system to do that because this is not based on data. No. Okay, it is based on the holistic, philosophy or maybe the mindset about the way human uniquely as a species to coexist with the world.
By the way, none of these questions, I didn't spend my time last night researching on ChatGPT, what I should ask them. Would have been a quick, one more question. Sir.
Thank you so much. Ivan Bobrovich, while we're building a security layer for kids and parents, actually to protect from technologies, and not to protect, but to help to protect from the threats. And my question is about the data and the ownership of yourself in the end of the day, because we give to the, like Dr. Lee, for example, another example is like public thing, right? But when when we share the private things, right, the AI models will know us much better than parents, much better than us. And how do you think about this? And will it be like the full loss of identity? So we'll lose ourselves to models just to simplify the life a bit? Because definitely AI simplifies the life. But to make it really simplified, we need to get our identity in that way. What do you think about this? And especially for kids, because like they will not see the world without an AI. How do you see from that perspective the future? Thank you.
I can start. Maybe allow me just to be very geeky and technical. I think that the next generation of models will be very intelligent about the concept of privacy. And so, for example, today, if you use GPT-4, give it a whole database of patient data and say, I want to have a conversation to analyze this data, slice and dice it, and under no circumstances violate the HIPAA health privacy law in the US. The GPT-4 will show an understanding of that prompt, and it will try hard, but a determined hacker, even without too much effort, can trick GPT-4 into divulging someone's age or weight or blood pressure or something like that. But the next generation of models will have an intelligence where I think that'll be very, very difficult. And so at least the base technology, I think, is arriving very quickly where the AI can follow our policies and instructions that we give it with respect to privacy. The harder question is, what as a society do we think those policies and rules should be?
Maybe just to add something here, there's a lot we don't know in terms of what it will mean for kids who are growing today. But I take comfort from the fact that we're already thinking about these questions, thanks to you and others, and thinking about what it will mean. If I take the parallel of social media, there wasn't the type of attention that there is today around AI from world leaders, from civil society, from researchers. We just let this develop. And we couldn't guess, or I guess few people could guess at the beginning, that this would have an impact, for example, on the way young girls are influenced on social media about the way they should look. And if they don't look like that, then it's a major problem. So this is not something I think we could have foreseen, but this is something, if you're really looking at the subject, in this case AI, trying to make sure you follow how it develops, you can catch the early signs of something that is developing and then quickly act and react. So I'm more hopeful in terms of AI because of all the attention, not because it's necessarily better or worse, but because of all the attention. And this is also why I really think action is the right word. We need to act so that AI develops for the better and not for the worst.
Let me take maybe a slightly different angle to approach that question. AI or internet as a whole, do something very unique in terms of the accessibility to knowledge. I remember when I grew up, in China as a kid, I don't have too many books to read. Whenever I receive a new book, I was like crazy and really want to spend the whole night reading that. And imagine kids in Africa and in other underdeveloped countries, knowledge are even not accessible. We take for granted that we have books, but that's not true for most of the people on this planet. AI is going to change that because with ChatGPT, which is trained on the entire knowledge of civilization, it's not put at your fingertips. Well, is that a great thing or a bad thing? Well, there is a risk. But I'm optimistic. I think people, the civilization grow with more knowledge accessible. There are always risks. When printing press made the Bible available to all people, the church was scared. But at the end of the day, we come to the age of enlightenment, right? So I think AI is going to play that kind of positive force in that. Another twist, I don't want to see AI always as the intruder, to do something bad. It's also the defender. Of the risk. To catch the violators and to catch the wrong behaviors or bad behaviors, you actually need AI because it is beyond the human capability to even defend ourselves. So if you see this bigger picture, it depends on who actually are giving access to the AI and also how government and the regulators are using AI. It's not about the AI as a technology itself. It's really about how we use it.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the panel. Fascinating conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.